All right, hello everyone. I am Connie Lepersky, and I am the director at White Rock Montessori here in East Dallas. And I get to talk with you for just a few minutes about the adolescent plane of development. And that is the third plane, what we refer to as the newborn to society. So Dr. Montessori has a quote that I think is very impactful about this age group. She said, psychologists interested in adolescent education think of it as a period of so much psychic transformation that it is best compared to the first period, from birth to 6. The character is seldom stable at this age. There are signs of indiscipline and rebellion. Physical health is less stable and assured before. Anybody have an adolescent at home? Was anybody in here ever an adolescent? Does this sound familiar to you? So this is the description of the adolescent when all of those beautiful things that have just been described in the breakout sessions happen. And there are other wonderful characteristics. We refer to the adolescent as the social explorer, and this is the stage from 12 to 18 years old. It is a very tender and pivotal age. It is a very tender and pivotal age. Are adolescents showing us tenderness and pivotalness? No. What that looks like for them is really kind of a rough exterior. This attachment that they built from a very early age to the family unit becomes something that they start to individuate from. It's a natural process that needs to happen, but they don't understand it. So it can happen in a very challenging way in the family. They're very much like preschoolers, so all the things we just learned from our wonderful presenters up for the first plane of development. They have a huge growth spurt. It's second only to the period of birth to age 6. They need a lot more rest. Adolescents go from needing about 7 and 7.5 hours of sleep in the elementary age to 9 or 9.5 hours of sleep in this stage of development. Ironically, the melatonin in their brain that triggers sleep delays until about 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And so we do this really mean thing to adolescents. We start school at 7:30 in the morning when they can't go to sleep until 11 or 12 o'clock at night. So adolescents are historically very sleep deprived. They also obviously need a lot more food. If you've ever had a teenager in your house, trying to keep food in the cabinets and the refrigerator is next to impossible. Their formal thinking is coming into play. So the brain is pruning. They no longer need those concrete materials. They are able to abstract their learning. So a Montessori adolescent environment does not have Montessori materials on the shelves. They are now abstracting their learning. A very high need for physical and intellectual stimulation. So curriculum in a Montessori environment tends to be very challenging. And that is in part because of this need. It's also because the brain is going through and pruning any synapses that are not being used. So we want to use up as many as we possibly can to prevent that from happening. They're exploring the question of who am I versus who am I within the family. And that's where that individuation comes into play. So a Montessori middle school environment offers immersion and land lab experiences. Our students at our school leave campus every 6 weeks. They camp for 3 days and 2 nights away from home. The only adults that are with them are their teachers. And they set up tents, they cook, they clean, they restore the environment when they're done. They sleep in all sorts of weather to really give them that physical challenge of being away from home, of experiencing that next level of independence that has been fostered through all of these other age levels. Also high levels of structure and order, very similar to that in birth to 6. We tend to think, especially if our child has been in a Montessori environment from the very start, we tend to think as adults that this is a time to let go and leave them to their own initiative. The exact opposite is the case. They actually need more structure and order because of all the things that are going on in their brain, in their body, in their hormones. It is the developmental of social policy, the reflective mind, and their interpretive mind. In the last month, I have had conversations with middle schoolers about why we don't have a hot lunch program right now, why they can't play on the grass anymore, why we put a green carpet in their classroom without talking to them first. So this is the activist mode. Next bullet, a sense of justice and dignity. So everything is run through this filter of justice. So the curriculum has a high social justice component to it as well, and social independence. They are starting to do things with friends separate from the family. So Dr. Montessori says this is the time when the social man is created but has not yet reached full development. This is the sensitive period where there should develop the most notable characteristics that would prepare a man to be social, a sense of justice and a sense of personal dignity. And so we've heard tonight about all of the stages of normal development through the third stage of development. There's actually a fourth stage of development, and that is the stage of maturity from 18 to 24 years old. So Dr. Montessori didn't believe that a human was fully developed at the age of 18, but that instead they were still developing all the way up until the age of 24. And that meant that as a society, we still needed to serve them in their development. If somewhere along the line in these planes of development, any one of these characteristics that you've learned about tonight have been interrupted, let's say by a global pandemic, or biological interruptions happen as well, sometimes brain chemistry, family history, environmental factors create gaps in an individual, a human's development, then those things show up in a really significant way in adolescence. And so that's where occupational therapists, she was there a minute ago. Occupational therapists, reading specialists, physical therapists, math tutor, it's never too late to address that gap. It is easiest addressed in the youngest age groups and always able to be addressed at any point in time in an individual's development. And so the overarching theme for tonight is recognizing that, yes, our children and us as adults just navigated something that interrupted our development as humans. And so that means it is a time for us to identify what was interrupted in our development and support that with wonderful specialists, wonderful environments that recognize that and can find ways to fill that gap.
Thank you, Connie.